Simon here of DesignCourse.com, and this is a quick look at what we're going to be designing, which is a custom toggle switch as shown here. And so basically we're going to be stepping into Adobe Photoshop to first design two states of the toggle button, and then we're going to step into Android Studio, which is an IDE for creating apps for Android devices. So if you never used it before, there's a link to the installation and all that information below in the description of this video. Again, if you've never done any sort of programming, don't worry about it. I'll walk you through all the necessary steps that it takes to get to the functioning point. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here in Adobe Photoshop, we're gonna go to File, New, and I'm going to name it Toggle Design. You can name whatever you want. Width 1080, height 1920, and that happens to be the size of my Galaxy S5 phone. You can use whatever you want, really, just as long as it's big enough and it's in the orientation of a phone. Resolution, we're going to leave at 72 pixels per inch, and color mode RGB. Background content, I leave as transparent, or a specified transparent. Usually it's a white color, but that's fine. All right, so then hit OK, and we want to get this background color here on layer 1, so we're going to use the paint bucket tool right here, and we want to change this color to a light gray. So this is all the way white, and come down right around here, which is E8, E8, E8 for the hex code. Hit OK, left click, very simple. Take layer 1, double click on top of the text, and name it to BG for background. All right, so now we're going to create the actual toggle switch container. And to do that, we're going to use a rounded rectangle. So left click, drag, and specify rounded rectangle. Radius for the borders, for the corners, would be 25 pixels. All right, so the color, we're going to make it a pretty dark color, right around almost a black, but up a little bit higher. Hit OK. And just left click, hold Alt, and then drag out to a size roughly right around here. Take the move tool, position it here in the center. And now what we want to do is give it a stroke. So to do that, you double click on the right side of the layer to bring up the layer styles. The stroke option's right here. And we're going to increase the size roughly to 29 or 30 pixels. And we're going to leave it at outside, blend mode normal. Fill type, we're going to change it from a color to a gradient. Then we're going to change the angle as well. And I think I'm going to use 90 just for the angle. We're going to change the gradient by clicking on the gradient preview. And then we're going to change black to a just slightly darker gray than the background. So this is what we have. Hit OK, then hit OK. Now, I think the size, looking at it now, might be a little bit too large, so I'm going to take it in more like around 18 pixels. All right, now we'll hit OK. And looking at this, we could also add a gradient into the background. So we can go back to the effects or the layer styles by double-clicking the right side and go to Gradient Overlay. Just click over here for the gradient editor, and we'll double-click on the white portion. And we're going to bring it down just slightly, let's say like this, right around here. So it's not too much of a noticeable difference, but it's subtle. And hit OK. All right, simple enough, isn't it? All right, so now what we want to do with this single layer is duplicate it. Right click, duplicate layer. From now on, I'm going to use a shortcut that I set up, which is Control Shift and D. You can do that in Edit Preferences if you wish. All right, so now we have a copy of this. Now let's get this out and let's get rid of the gradient overlay. And let's also change the color here so we could see it to white. And now we need the direct selection tool. So left click over here, select direct selection tool. And actually the way I'm going to scale this down, instead of using that, I'm going to hit Control. Actually, real quickly, yeah, I am going to use this just to get it in the halfway point. So with the direct selection tool selected, we'll select the right portion over here of these points, these 4. Hold Shift to keep it at a perfect 100% horizontal alignment, and you can just eyeball it roughly around here. You could use your keyboard arrow keys as well. All right, so we want to get rid of the stroke because this isn't going to need a stroke. And we want to scale it down just a little bit. So with the move tool selected, hit Control T, Shift, and then Alt, and then just drag this in very slightly. Select move tool and then hit apply. You know what? I might want to go a little bit more than that. So I'm going to hit Control T, Shift Alt, and drag it in right around there. Select move tool, hit apply. Now we can move it over with our arrow keys so that it's lined up a little bit better. All right, so now what we want to do is give this a gradient too. So what we can do is go back to gradient overlay, double click on it, and this time we're going to change the colors here. So this is going to be a gray. I'll leave it there for now. And this one's going to be a near white. Actually, I'm going to make it 100% white. Right there looks pretty good. Hit OK. We're also going to give it a stroke. And this time we're going to align the stroke inside. We're only going to make it like 3 pixels. And we're going to change the fill type from gradient to color. And we're going to make the color white. And that way we have this little sort of highlight that's going around at the bottom, more noticeable where it's darker in the gradient. All right, so now we can go ahead and hit OK. And now we can add a couple like little grippers, I guess you can call them. There's going to be 3 circles. So I'm going to zoom up here, and I'm going to use the ellipse tool. And I'm just going to hold Shift and draw small circles just like that. Just one small circle. Control H. We can right click this layer right here and specify copy layer style. Right click on the one we just created, hit paste layer style. We're going to get rid of the stroke and just leave it like this so we have the gradient that's overlaid in it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is hit Control, Shift, and D, which is the shortcut I set up for duplicate layer. Hit OK. I'm going to hold Shift to make it a 45-degree angle, and then hold Shift again, or Control Shift D rather, to duplicate it, and do the same thing, and try to line these up so that they're even. I'm just going to eyeball it real quick. Take those 3 layers and try to position them in a center, and you can scale them up by hitting Control T if you wish. And I'm going to hit Control 1, that's the 100%. Alt in the scroll wheel will get us back to a smaller view. All right, so you can see it's very subtle. You can't really tell too much of what's going on, but you can still just see it enough for it to have an effect. You could, if you wanted to, take the gradient and you could make it slightly darker just so you can see him just a tad bit more, like that for this one. Then hit OK, 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 right click, copy layer style, and then select these 2 by holding Shift, and then right click, paste layer style. So now they're a little bit darker and stand out better. All right, so that takes care of this portion. Now what we want to do is add an on text over there. So what we can do is take the type tool, and we'll make this kind of like a real bright highlighter sort of green/yellow color. And that's C0FF00 if you want to use the same color. Hit OK. Left click, and then hit caps lock on. And mine's really small, so I'm going to select move tool, hit Control T, and then get right up here, hold Shift, and then specify on, or position it rather, select move tool, hit apply. Okay, so this is the on state. And what I want to do now is I want to create kind of like a glow that goes on here. So instead of adding an outer glow to this layer style on this layer, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to add it as a new layer, as a layer mask on our first layer that we created. And right now would be a good time to rename these layers. We'll call this toggle container. You don't necessarily have to, but it makes it a good idea to usually. So we'll just call this, we'll call it button. These ones we're going to just group up, Control G, and we'll just call these draggers. All right, so now things make a little bit more sense. All right, so on toggle container, we're going to create a new layer. Control Shift and N for a new layer, and we're just going to call this glow. Oh, I forgot to specify to create a clipping mask, but if you did the same thing, just right click and hit create clipping mask. Now it's going to point down to this toggle container, which means anything that's in this layer will only be shown on inside the content of this toggle container. So obviously we don't want the glow to extend outside of this. So we're going to take the brush tool, and I'm going to make sure the hardness is 0%. We're going to take the size, around 300 pixels will work well for my current size, and then just left click once, and then you're going to run into the issue where you don't see it. That's because you have to make a change real quickly to the layer styles over here for the toggle container layer. And what you need to do is turn this blend clip layers as group off, and then turn blend interior effects as group. Now you can see it, and then hit OK. Now this stands out just a bit too much, so we could take the opacity of the glow layer down right around there. All right, and then what we're going to do on the on layer, double click it, and we're going to create an outer glow just to reinforce the idea of the glow a little bit more. So I'm going to change blend mode to normal. We're going to change the color here to this pale yellow color to something that's more accurate, basically the same color as before. And you can experiment with how much you want this to glow with the size and the spread. So I'm just going to leave it at 0 for the spread and 10 for the size, and then hit OK. Finally, I want to create like a shadow that's coming down from this element right here. And so the way we can do that is with this button layer selected, we can duplicate it, Control-Shift-D, or right-click on the layer. And we're going to select the bottom one, the original one, and move it down holding Shift. I'm going to get rid of the effects, and I'm going to double-click it to change the color to black. Then hit OK. Then what we're going to do is right-click and rasterize it. So it's no longer a shape layer that we can control with the points. Right now it's rastered, it's pixels. And then what we're going to do is use the eraser tool. And 198 should work pretty well. And I'm just going to hold Shift, left-click, and drag the bottom portion all the way off. Then I'm going to take the opacity down a lot. Right around 13% should work pretty well. So now it looks like, the light source is coming from the top, it's hitting everything, it's light up here, getting darker here, and we have a shadow here. All right, pretty simple. So that takes care of the design for our on button. So all we have to do to create the off state is very simple. So select your top layer, select the toggle container layer, so everything except the BG, and hit Control G. We're going to call this on by double clicking it. Then we're going to duplicate it, Control Shift and D, and then rename this to off. And we're going to move it down. All right, so we could select both of these groups and just move them up here in the center. So for off, we want to move some layers around. So we'll first go ahead and with the move tool, we can auto select layers so that we don't have to sit here trying to decipher which layers we want to move. We can just auto select. Sorry about that, my recording application stopped. But yeah, auto select layer just makes it easy for you to select whatever you want to move, then it'll automatically select on whichever layer you want. So we're going to take this text right here, which is the on text, and we're just going to move it over behind. Actually, we're going to take the glow as well, which I believe is right here. So you can hold Control to select both of those layers. I'm going to deselect auto select layer and then just move both of these over holding Shift. And then we're going to take the draggers and the button copy and button right here. I think those are the three layers we need. Yeah, and move them over here holding Shift. And then, of course, we have to adjust this on text. And real quickly, if you want to do the whole auto select layer thing, but not have to move your mouse all the way up there, you can just left click real quick. If it's turned off, left click and hold Control, and that automatically selects on the layer. So we'll move this over. And we're going to get rid of the effect. We're also going to get rid of the button copy. Oops, wrong one. The glow we're going to get rid of. And for this, we're going to name it off, of course. So we're going to select the type tool, adjust it by hitting off right there, or adding the two Fs, move it over. And then we're going to take the type tool. We'll double click on this here to change the color to kind of a pretty dark color, but just so you can notice that, hey, this is off, it's not glowing or whatever. So in terms of usability, you can understand that it's an off position. The on is really bright. All right, so that is it. So now what we can do is let's collapse both of these layers, or layer groups rather, and we're going to duplicate them. Control-Shift-D, or just right-click and duplicate them. Hit OK. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to flatten these two up here, so or merge them rather. So hit Control-E on the on copy, and that basically takes all those layers and it just flattens onto a rasterized surface. I'm going to hide these as well and do the same thing with the off. So hit Control-E, and now they're all on one layer, which you can't edit really at all. So this preserves them by just having copies if you want to make adjustments to them later on. So now what we want to do for the on copy, I'm going to hit Control-A to select all, and then Control-C. So that's going to copy everything that's currently on that layer. File New, and this is the size of the buttons. We're going to hit OK, Control-V to paste. So that's the full extent of the on, and the reason it's lower here is because we had this this gradient fade shadow type thing down here. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just we still have everything selected, so just hit Control-C, switch back, Control-V, and there we go. So very simple. You may notice though that these may not line up perfectly, because I can kind of notice if well, let me make sure that that's the case. Okay, these should be pretty much 100% on the same alignment, because if they're not, and one's off by a few pixels, when you go to actually use your finger to hit the toggle switch, you'll notice the whole container will move slightly, even if it's off a few pixels. All right, so this should be good. The size is going to be too large, though. I can tell you right now, just by experimenting before I did this video, the size ends up being something where there's you can't scale it down within the Android Studio, and so it ends up distorting it. So what I found, if I just go to image size and use a size like say 235 pixels for the width, and make sure this is automatically scaling down the height as well proportionally, then just hit OK, and now we have a smaller button that's going to work a lot better. So now we're just going to deselect the layer 2, because you want to hide that, otherwise it's going to make the shadow more prominent than what we want. And so with the on button selected, we're going to go ahead and go to File, Save for Web, and we're going to change it to PNG 24 transparency right here. And then go ahead and save that. And I'm just going to leave it on my desktop. So I'm just going to call this one on.png. And I have one that's already named that, so I had to overwrite it. And then just hide the layer 1, bring back layer 2, which is the off state. Control, Shift, Alt, and S is the shortcut key for Save for Web. Or just go to File, Save for Web, and then name this one off. Very simple. So that is the design here, and I would definitely save this as well. So I'm going to save it as real quickly. And I've done that off screen, so now we're ready to go to switch over to Android Studio to make this a reality. Alright, so after you've installed Android Studio, and I've linked a couple guides that will help you through installing it, and trust me, if you weren't able to get it to load up correctly the first time, that's perfectly natural. You just need to make sure you get the Java installed correctly in order for that to work. So follow those guides. I'm not going to really try to get into troubleshooting with that, because I know myself personally had some issues with that. But once you have it installed and loaded up, you should see this initial screen here. This will be empty. So what we want to do is just specify new project right here, and the application name, I'm going to just call this awesome toggle. Company domain name, I'm not even going to mess with that right now. Project location, that should be automatically set up as well. I'm going to hit next. And for phone and tablet, that's all we want. Minimum SDK, I'm going to leave it what it's currently set at, and it lets you know, based on what you choose, how many API, or how large or how many people it's going to basically be distributed towards. Jesus Christ, learn how to talk, right? And then hit next. And then after that, we're just going to leave this at blank activity. And we'll just go ahead and hit next now. And then finally, my activity, we can leave it like that. No big deal. And hit finish. So then it takes a little while for this to build the project. And again, if you don't have this initially set up correctly, sometimes it'll go through this real quick and then you're not going to have options available up here. I went through that because the Android SDK wasn't available. But yeah, these should all be clickable when this loads up. And this is basically what you should see. So you see a preview here of everything on this side. And then also down here, we see a text which has our coding for the layout. And then we also have a design tab where we can see the layout and we can position things like this instead of messing with code and stuff. So this hello world, if you were to take your phone, your Android phone, and connect it, assuming the drivers are all installed properly, and you were to hit play up here, this is what would show up on your phone, exactly as you see here. They do give you options here to specify different types of devices. You can also do cool things like switch it to landscape, back to portrait. So anyhow, just to get started with this, I'm going to get rid of Hello World. Just select it and delete. And I want to change our background color. So to do that, we're going to go back to Photoshop here, open up the file that I had to removed already or closed, and just use the eyedropper tool to get it in their foreground color. And then the hex code is automatically highlighted. Control-C, cancel. And now we'll go ahead and we'll see that we have over here something called background. We'll just put the number sign and then paste, Control-V, enter. Now you see that it just got a little bit darker, which is the color that we used. So now we want to create a new folder called Drawable. So you have these different folders called Drawable, HDPI, and etc. There's like 4 of them. We want to create a new folder or directory, and we're going to call it Drawable, and then hit enter. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to open up our Windows Explorer or go to your desktop or wherever you saved it. I saved those 2 files, the on and off.png on my desktop. You want to go to those and you want to select both of them and copy them. And actually, I just paused and put them into a new directory. I don't want you guys seeing all my porn files. No, I'm just kidding. But I put them right here, on, off, just Control-C, copy them. So you select both, copy. Very simple. Hopefully you know how to do that. And then with the drawable folder selected, hit Control-V to paste, and then hit OK right here. Now they show up here as drawable resource files. We need to create another file though, and to do that we're going to right-click, New, and then drawable resource file. Now the file name, I'm going to call it toggle_switch. Hit OK. And it brings up this XML document here. And so inside of these 2 selector tags, we're going to have a reference to on and off. All right, so bear with me if you're a designer, if you've never messed with this before. It's not entirely important at this point that you 100% understand what's going on. So just don't scream or cry or anything. I'm going to copy the code off screen, so I'm not sitting here typing this. It's actually just 2 lines, very simple. Control-V, I'm going to paste this in, and what you can do is just zoom up if you need to or pause to get this typed in right here. This is basically saying item Android drawable, which is a reference to this, and then at drawable, which is the folder on. You don't include the .png, and then Android state checked is true. So that means if we leave this at true, it's going to show the on graphic. And then I'm going to take that and copy it again. Well, it was already copied, so I didn't have to do that. Control-V to paste it, and then drawable off. And then this one is false. Very, very simple. We see a preview show up here. So now that you have that done, we want to go back to the layout or myactivity_my.xml, and we want to add a toggle button right here. We can see it in the widgets. So just bring us over here. We can center it like that. And this is the default design of the on-off switch. So being that we want to make it custom, we just have to make a change. So we have to go to the text tab, and we'll see the toggle button that we just added. These are all the values that make it appear as it is right there. And so what we want to do is after these the end portion of this, we want to add a couple things. So I'm going to put Android, and then I'm going to put in background and equals quotes at drawable, just like before, toggle switch, which is the name of this XML document. And again, you don't put .xml. All right, we gotta put a couple more because if you could see right here, just barely, it says off, like in this label right here where the mouse is. So if you don't want that text, obviously, because we already have our text in the image. So you have to add a couple things. Android, semicolon, or not semicolon, but colon, text off equals blank Android text on, because this also specifies the text for the on state is just empty, just like that. And let's go ahead and get this moved over. And that is basically it. So I save this, go back to the design, and the little off text shouldn't be there anymore. And so yeah, let's go ahead and see what this looks like flipped in landscape mode. It's perfectly center. That's good. Switch it back. All right, so now at this point, what we can do is, to preview this, you can launch an emulator, which would be just, it's still on your computer, but it just basically emulates the specs of a phone. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to connect my phone, which is the Galaxy S5. And when you connect your phone, if it's done properly and set up correctly, and we hit play, and now it says we have a status down here, executing task. Yeah, right here it allows you to choose a running device, and that's what I have currently set up. You can also launch the emulator like I mentioned, but you have to set that up correctly. There are tutorials online, on YouTube even, that will show you how to create your own emulator. So I'll try to remember to link those in the description of this video, because if you don't have Android and you have Apple and you're trying to follow this, then obviously your only choice is the emulator to check it out. So choose a running device. That's what I'm going to choose. Then I'll hit OK, and we'll see if this loads up. It's going to do a few things here. All right, sorry, I had to pause, and I knocked my microphone. I was messing with my phone, and I lost like 5 minutes of recording because my mic completely got messed up. Anyhow, yeah, it launched perfectly on my phone and it worked well, as shown at the beginning of the video, and it's very simple. So yeah, definitely look out for more of these tutorials where we're going to focus on creating custom interface element based on some of these other ones like the switch and buttons and etc. And then in the future, we're going to work on creating full interfaces, and then maybe after that get into actually, maybe writing custom and very simple applications. But for now, this is good. This is a good introductory in terms of how to get an app just loaded up on your phone and customizing the graphics. So yeah, check out DesignCourse.com if you haven't. Check out the premium service, which is it's several things, but the core service is Mentor, where I literally work with you one-on-one to become a good designer. And yeah, check out. Definitely subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't. I always spam those links on my via annotations on YouTube. Check out the Facebook page and the other social networks. I'm trying to grow those. All right, so look out for more videos very shortly. All right, goodbye.